These quarters pass through millions of hands, but most people never check them properly. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we're taking a look at 3 Washington quarters that could be hiding more than just 25 cents. 1983 P Washington Quarter. 1988 D Washington Quarter. 1986 P Washington Quarter. These coins feature the classic heraldic eagle reverse design and are struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition used across modern U.S. quarters. Most of them are worn, scratched, and heavily circulated, just ordinary pocket change at first glance. But sometimes, collectors find mint errors, die varieties, or high-grade examples that make certain coins stand out. Before you spend your next quarter, take a closer look, because one small detail can change everything. Let's begin with coin number 1. Have you ever looked at a coin and felt nothing at all? Just a quick glance. A familiar shape. A piece of change you don't think twice about. And then it disappears into spending. But what if that simple moment is exactly where most people make a mistake? Because sometimes, the most ordinary coins are the ones that carry the longest silent journeys. Today's story begins with the 1983 P Washington Quarter. At first sight, it looks completely normal. No shine that demands attention. No unusual color. No obvious error that screams value. Just a standard U.S. quarter. The familiar face of George Washington on the front. And the powerful eagle design on the reverse. Strong. Simple. Familiar. And that familiarity is exactly what makes it invisible. Because the human mind ignores what it sees every day. But collectors don't. Collectors slow down. They observe. They study. When this quarter was minted in 1983, the United States was already deep into modern coin production. Copper-nickel-clad coins were standard. Billions of quarters were already circulating. Cash registers were full. Arcades were alive. Machines were constantly fed with coins. And in that fast-moving world, the 1983 P Washington Quarter entered circulation. Not as something special, but as something ordinary. Millions of identical coins were released. All with the same design. All with the same purpose. To move. To circulate. To disappear into everyday life. But here is where the real story begins. Because the moment a coin leaves the mint, its life stops being controlled. And starts being shaped by time. Nobody knows where it will go. Nobody knows how long it will survive in clean condition. Nobody knows how many hands it will pass through. This quarter could have spent years in busy cities. Or traveled through small towns. Or stayed inside vending machines. Or sat forgotten inside jars and drawers. Each path is different. Each journey is unknown. And that uncertainty is what makes coins fascinating. Because every scratch tells a silent story. Every mark is a trace of movement. Every worn edge is proof of time passing. Over years of circulation, the 1983 P Washington Quarter begins to change. Not suddenly. Slowly. Almost invisibly. The original mint shine fades. High points start losing sharp detail. Fine lines become softer. Edges lose sharp definition. And what once looked new starts to look aged. Collectors notice this immediately. Because they are not just looking at coins. They are reading them. Like a physical record of history. The first thing they observe is Washington's portrait. Is it still sharp? Are the details still strong? Or has circulation softened the image over time? Even small differences matter. Because in coin collecting, small differences create separation. Then attention moves to the reverse side. The eagle design. The shield. The wings. The structure. This is where condition becomes visible. Because fine details are the first to disappear with circulation. And what remains tells a story of survival. Not every coin survives the same way. Some stay in heavy circulation for decades. Some get stored early. Some remain nearly untouched. And that difference creates value perception. But not in the way most people think. This coin is not valuable because it is rare. It is interesting because it survived differently. Out of billions minted, only a small portion remains in strong condition today. And that small difference is what collectors focus on. Because collectors don't chase quantity. They chase quality within quantity. Think about how many places this quarter may have been. A grocery store counter. A parking meter. A vending machine. A wallet. A pocket. A forgotten jar. Each place adds a layer of history. Each transaction adds silent wear. And none of it is recorded. No one writes it down. No one tracks it. But the coin remembers everything through its condition. Scratches are not just damage. They are movement. Faded surfaces are not just aging. They are history in physical form. Worn details are not loss. They are proof of survival through time. And that is what makes coins like this silently powerful. Not because they are rare, but because they represent millions of unnoticed journeys. Every 1983 Washington quarter carries a different story. Even if they all started the same. Even if they all were minted in the same year. Time does not treat them equally. And that is the hidden truth of coin collecting. The story is never about how many were made. The story is about how many survived well. And how time shaped each one differently. So when you see a 1983 Washington quarter, don't rush past it. Don't assume it is just another coin. Because sometimes, the most ordinary-looking objects are carrying the longest silent journeys of all. And this is only the beginning. Because the next coin carries a different mint mark. And a completely different story shaped by circulation and time. What if a coin could tell you how fast time really moves? Not in years. Not in dates. But in the way it slowly changes without ever asking permission. Because today's story continues with the 1988 Washington quarter. A coin that looks simple at first glance. But carries a completely different energy once you understand its journey. When you first see it, nothing feels unusual. George Washington remains on the front. The eagle remains on the reverse. The same copper nickel-clad structure. The same 5-cent style quarter design used across millions of coins. Everything feels familiar. And that familiarity is exactly why it gets ignored. Because the mind stops questioning what it sees every day. But collectors never stop questioning. When this coin was minted in Denver in 1988, the world was already moving at high speed. Cash was still everywhere. Coins were constantly exchanged. Arcades, vending machines, tolls, stores. Everything ran on physical change. And in that non-stop circulation, the 1988 quarter entered the system. Just like millions of others. No spotlight. No attention. No expectation of importance. Just another piece of everyday money. But coins do not stay the same once they enter circulation. That is where their real story begins. Because circulation is not a moment. It is a process. A long, silent process of change. At first, the coin looks perfect. Sharp mint details. Clean surfaces. Strong contrast in design. But over time, everything begins to shift. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Slowly. Like time itself is pressing gently against the surface. Every transaction adds a trace. Every hand leaves invisible marks. Every surface contact changes the metal slightly. And the 1988 D Washington quarter begins to transform. Collectors understand this transformation deeply. Because they don't see coins as objects. They see them as records. The first thing they look at is Washington's face. Is the portrait still defined? Do the facial lines remain strong? Or has circulation softened the details? Even the smallest fading matters. Because it shows how far the coin has traveled through everyday life. Then attention moves to the eagle on the reverse. The shield. The wings. The feathers. These are the first details to lose sharpness under heavy circulation. And once those details begin to fade, the coin tells a different kind of story. A story of use. A story of movement. A story of survival. Think about where this coin may have gone. A busy gas station in the late 80s. A vending machine in a school hallway. A store counter in a small town. A wallet that changed hands countless times. A jar filled with loose change over decades. None of these moments were important individually. But together, they shaped the coin's identity. Because coins do not live one life. They live thousands of small moments. And those moments leave traces. Scratches are not just damage. They are evidence of contact. Faded shine is not just aging. It is proof of time passing. Worn edges are not just wear. They are history written into metal. And that is why collectors slow down when they see coins like this. Because they are not just looking at a quarter. They are looking at a timeline. A timeline that cannot be recreated. A timeline that exists only in the condition of the coin. Now here is something most people misunderstand. Coins like the 1988 D Washington quarter are not judged only by age. They are judged by survival quality. Because out of millions minted, only a portion survives in better condition today. Not because they were special, but because they were lucky. Luck in circulation matters more than people think. Some coins get heavily used. Some stay protected early. Some remain in pockets for years. Some are forgotten and rediscovered later. And each path creates a different outcome. That is why two identical quarters can look completely different today. One heavily worn. One still sharp. One forgotten. One preserved. Same year. Same mint. Different journey. And that difference is what makes collectors interested. Not perfection. But variation. Because variation tells a deeper story about time itself. Every 1988 D Washington quarter carries this silent truth. That time does not treat objects equally. Some survive. Some fade. Some disappear. But all of them travel through the same world. And now, as we move forward in this series, we reach a coin that comes from yet another moment in time. A coin that looks familiar, but holds its own quiet journey through circulation. What if the coin you ignore every day is actually the one that has survived the most? Not because it is rare. Not because it is special. But because it kept moving when everything else changed. Today's final chapter brings us to the 1986 Washington quarter. At first glance, it looks exactly like every other quarter. George Washington on the front. The bald eagle on the reverse. Copper nickel-clad surface. Standard U.S. circulation design. Nothing unusual. Nothing that forces attention. And that is the biggest illusion in coin collecting. Because ordinary appearance often hides the longest survival story. When the 1986 quarter was struck, it entered a fully active cash world. A world where coins were not stored. They were used. Daily. Constantly. Without hesitation. Stores. Tolls. Arcades. Gas stations. school canteens. Everywhere coins were needed. This quarter moved. And once a coin enters that flow, its identity begins to change. Not in a single moment, but in thousands of small moments stacked together. A pocket here. A register there. A vending machine exchange. A forgotten drawer. A coin jar filled over years. Each stage adds something invisible. A mark. A scratch. A softening of detail. And slowly, the 1986 Washington quarter begins to transform. Not into something different, but into something shaped by life. Collectors understand this shift very clearly. Because they don't just see coins as currency. They see them as survivors. Now focus on Washington's portrait. At the start, it was sharp, defined, cleanly struck. But circulation never leaves it untouched. High points begin to soften first. Facial details lose crispness. The surface becomes smoother through constant contact. Not damaged. Just changed. Then turn the coin in your mind. The eagle design appears. Strong symbol. Sharp lines originally. But over time, the wings and feathers begin to fade slightly. Not disappearing. Just becoming quieter. And that quiet fading is where the story lives. Because it tells you something important. This coin has been used. Not once. Not twice. But repeatedly across years of everyday life. Think about how many times this coin may have changed hands. Thousands of small exchanges. Thousands of unnoticed moments. Moments that were never recorded. Never remembered. Never documented. But still real. Still physical. Still written into the coin itself. And that is what makes coins like this fascinating. They are not about value alone. They are about survival through time. Some coins get lost early. Some stay stored. Some remain nearly untouched. But others, like the 1986 quarter, continue moving until they naturally wear down. Not because they are weak, but because they are used. And usage creates history. Now here is the deeper truth collectors think about. Out of millions minted, only a fraction remains in better condition today. Not because those coins were chosen, but because they simply experienced less circulation. That difference is not planned. It is accidental. And that accident creates interest in collecting. Because collectors are not only searching for rarity. They are searching for variation in survival. Every 1986 Washington quarter carries a different version of the same story. Same design. Same origin. Different journey. Some coins reflect heavy circulation. Some show moderate wear. Some remain surprisingly preserved. And each one represents a different path through everyday life. That is the silent beauty of this coin. It does not announce its history. It reveals it slowly. Through condition. Through detail. Through time. And when you place all three coins together in this series, 1983p, 1988d, 1986, a pattern begins to appear. Different years. Different mint marks. Different circulation paths. But one shared reality. Time changes everything it touches. And coins are one of the few objects that make that change visible. So the next time you see a simple Washington quarter, don't dismiss it too quickly. Because sometimes, the most ordinary object in your hand has already traveled through decades of silent history. And this is where the journey ends. But the story of coins in circulation never really stops.